Okay, so like I said, let's just start. Others will join us in the course of the session. Today is our last lectures. Today is our last lectures together, and I want to believe that the section has been, to a large extent, informative. We started last week, Tuesday, and I posted a discussion on Moodle. I noticed that just only Google that have actually commented on the discussion. The deadline for the discussion is this Friday, which is in 3 days time, 20th August. So please make sure you comment on the topic in the discussion forum. And like I said, you need a minimum of 3 posts for you to have qualified for the mark for that assessment. And so the way you do it is you post your own comment. Your own original comment has to be your first comments or your first posting, your own original ideas relating to the question that was raised. And then the other two is going to be response to what people have posted already. So you just go to the response that have been posted by your colleagues, and then you look at their response and possibly comment on it. Either you add to it or you critique it or something. Just, it's a discussion. So you post your own original comment and you comment on other people's comments. So technically you're supposed to post your comment and comment on other people's comments also twice. So 1 of your comments and 2 of other people's comments. And if it is interesting to you, which I hope it will be, you can comment on as many people as possible. So the minimum is 3. There is no maximum at this point. So please just take note of that. It ends this Friday, the 20th of August. Okay. So before we go into what we are going to be doing today, which is monitoring and evaluation, we'll be doing it in theory and in practical, in the sense that we do monitoring and evaluation of projects, and we will assume that this past week, this 1 week has been a project in itself. We set out to achieve some certain objective, in the sense of we are hoping that by the end of the session, you guys would have learned 1 or 2 things or understand 1 or 2 concepts as relating to project management and sustainability. So today being the end of the session, we also want to evaluate what is your own assessment of the whole project, the whole session as it is. So before we go deep into it, I want to ask, has there been any challenge so far? Any challenge so far? Any contribution, anything, any observation? Something you want to bring to our attention that we need to look at before we go into the topic for today?
Morning, everyone. No, on my side, it's good here. I haven't had any challenges with the module so far. It's all clear.
Any other? Any other comments?
I have no comment. I'm also fine, but I still have to go back and check my slide.
And then how is, maybe I should add to that in your comments if you need to say something. I should add to that. How is the assignment? Yes, Sheila?
Morning. Morning, guys. No, not a comment. I think maybe it's my own challenge. It's not to get here to hear you. That's my problem. So that's why I said it's not a comment. But what I'm going to do is to try to do more from the notes and the slides. Maybe that can help me to work with my colleagues where I didn't get clearly because of the challenge that I'm encountering. That's my problem. Sometimes even the network That's my challenges.
Thank you very
The
much for
network
that.
and the language. I don't know the language, it's what, it's not easy to hear you, doctor. I don't like to lie. I'm trying, but it's not easy.
Okay,
But it's
okay.
not your fault. That is why I said it's my fault. Yes.
Yeah, that is noted. That is noted. It's no problem at all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I will try as much as possible to be more audible, and possibly I will not. I will try as much as possible to ensure that I'm slower in the comments as I continue. Right. So yeah, thank you very much. I was going to raise again that before you go in, Linde, before you go in, I just want to add that you can comment on your challenge, and you also I also want to ask as relating to the assignments. My session of the assignment that is due on the 3rd of September. I hope there's no challenge. You guys are fine and the likes. So yeah, go ahead, Lindy. Linde.
Yes, Prof. Doc, kindly assist me. Maybe if I've been having challenges then there, can we have time apart from maybe 10 minutes of your time, maybe on Wednesday, fine-tuning my assignment, because I started tackling my assignment and I'm not sure if I'm using the correct structures, or are we allowed to conduct you apart from these sessions? Can we talk aside? Is it feasible?
You raised two things now, so I'm just going to address this quickly. One, you can consult me anytime. I'm available for consultation. That's part of the course. So I'm available for consultation and anytime. Or better still, you can just reach out to me and then we can make arrangement on when it's visible for both of us. And that goes to the entirety of the class. If you have any challenge at any point, you can reach out to me and then we can make arrangements on how the time that is suitable for us to consult. Right? That being said, and then on the assignment structure, page 2 of the assignments, the assignment I posted on Moodle, the second page give a structure on how I expect you to go about answering the question. It is not cast in iron. It is just what's going to be the word? It's just a template. You are not obliged to go by that template, but it gives you a picture of what is expected for you to do in the assignment. But yes, we can talk outside the class at any point. You have my number on WhatsApp. I'm in the group, your class group, and also my email address. You can also send me an email, and then we'll pick it up from there. Okay.
Thank you, Doc.
You're welcome. Yeah. Any other points before we move to the session today? Okay. So our Zoom silence implies that we are fine for now. But at any point, if you are not, like I always say, please, you are allowed to reach out to me at any time. Send me a message and then we can talk if we need to. Otherwise, you can also access the recordings. I post all the recordings on Moodle and you can access them. And or better still, maybe what we will do is that I will also post the link to the recordings, the YouTube link to the recordings. I will post it on the WhatsApp page too, for easy access. So I'm just going to possibly I'll find a way of tagging it and then post it on the WhatsApp group. But the entirety of my session, the 3 sessions I took, will be on Moodle, or they are on Moodle, and this one will also be on Moodle. And the ones Max 2, the 2 session Max 2 is also on Moodle already, as well as the session Dr. Heyman took yesterday is also on Moodle already. So you guys can access that. The materials are also posted on Moodle. You can also access that. and then you are available to reach out to any one of us via email, via WhatsApp or phone. Anyone that is suitable, you can reach out to us and then we'll pick it up from there. Okay, so let's go to what we have to do today. Today we'll be discussing measurements. We'll be discussing project monitoring and evaluation. Project monitoring, evaluation, and assessments. That's what we'll be discussing today. And okay, I just want to ensure that, okay, I think the best is for me to just put off my video so that you'll be able to see the entire slide in itself. Okay. Okay, good. So, like I said, today we'll be discussing project monitoring, evaluation, and assessment. Project monitoring, evaluation, and assessment. Okay, so basically what we are going to be looking at today at the end of the lecture, I'm hoping that you'll be able to explain what monitoring is, what evaluation is, and what assessment is. You should be able to explain the principle of developing a monitoring system for your projects. You should know the project evaluation type. You should know the features of monitoring and evaluation. You should know the frameworks. You should be able to explain and apply the guidelines for effective evaluation. What are the guidelines? What are those things we are supposed to look at? And then what are evaluation standards? You should be able also to explain and apply the evaluation phases and process. What are the phases and what are the process of evaluation, as well as approaches to evaluation. So basically, this is what we are hoping to achieve at the end of the session today. And like I always say, it is not a monologue. It's not a monologue. It's supposed to be a discussion. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think project monitoring is? What is project monitoring? What do you mean by project monitoring? Any idea? Who is helping us out? What is your understanding? Yes, go ahead, please.
My understanding, project monitoring is an ongoing process of what can I call this? Ongoing process of the other word for monitoring, checking the progress of the projects. If it's still on the right side, there's a per objectives and per planning. That's what I can say, project monitoring.
Thank you very much for that. Ongoing process, right?
Ongoing process of checking the progress, okay, including the challenges and achievements of the project.
Thank you very much for that. I like the word you used. First is ongoing. First, you said it is ongoing. Second, you said checking to see if the project is still within the objective, right?
And that's a plan.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Yes, any other
challenges,
view?
Including the challenges. Thank you.
Very much for that. Thank you. Any other view? What is project monitoring?
Good morning.
Hello.
When you monitor a project, I would say that is where that you are going to, you have your plan, and like the previous speaker has already indicated that that's where you want to observe as to whether the plan is going accordingly. So in this process is whereby you are going to identify also the challenges so that you intervene in solving those challenges, so that at the end your project is not going to delay, because like we said that the project has a time frame. So if you don't identify the challenges and try to resolve them in time, it means that your project is not going to be finished in time. So it's like a way of trying to observe as to whether you are still on the right track, and also resolving the challenges at the same time.
Thank you very much for. Can we mute our mics, please? If you are not saying anything, please mute your mic. Please mute your mic. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, thank you very much for that contribution. You've covered basically everything project monitoring is all about. Right? It's looking at the projects, a continuous process of, or an ongoing process of observing your projects, ensuring that you are still within track. Yeah, that is what it is. And then I remember that when we started the class, in the first class, we talked about project milestones and project deliverables. And then we said projects, they are like you raised, project has a beginning and an end, a start date and an end date. It is a problem from where we are to where we want to be. So in the case of monitoring, we are not only looking at, you are correct by saying that we tend to look at it to see if there are challenges, and then resolve those particular challenge in the course of the project. Another thing is that we are trying to see if we are still on track, if we are actually heading towards the destination we intended for. Because it is possible for us to say we are going this destination, and then because we have not been observing what is transpiring, we realize that we are going a different destination entirely. But by the time you monitor the projects, looking at it alongside your milestones and your deliverables, you'll be able to know if you have digressed, if you have shifted away from the focus of the project, right? So that you will know. And then, like we said when we discussed documentation, project documentation, you will be able to, by monitoring your project, you will be able to know when a particular challenge comes up, and then you solve that challenge immediately before it becomes it becomes too big and affects the entirety of your project. And like you raised now, it affects your timing too, because there has to be an end to your projects. By monitoring, you are able to ensure that your project ends at the scheduled time for the project. So thank you very much for that, right? Okay, so so when we discuss project monitoring, like I said, everything we said, we just itemize it's what it is. It is a continuous observation process. That is what it is. It is systemic. It's a continuous observation process of your project. And this time there's what? A systematic collection of relevant selected data to provide a project or a program manager, right? Including stakeholders, indicators about the progress being made and the objective reached. Like we said, you have your milestones and you have your deliverables. So it is a systematic collection of relevant data as relating to a project, right? A continuous observation process of your project. So that's what it is. Another word is that we said project monitoring is keeping track of the implementation process of a particular project. That's another word, that's another definition for it. Just keeping track of the project. And then we also said it implies watching the progress of a project against the goals and the deliverable that we have raised. Periodically checking the progress against the targets. These are just putting it into sentence, but everything we just discussed now is what project monitoring is. And I like what you already said, it is checking, continuous ongoing checking of a project to ensure that it is still within the objective of that project. That's when we talk about the goals and the deliverables. We cannot overemphasize this. So basically that's what it is. Okay, so if this is what monitoring is, what is evaluation? What is evaluation? Any idea?
Morning, Doc. I think evaluation is the assessment of the value and the quality of the activities or services, implemented in the project. You're basically just assessing the quality of the work and the value thereof, I think.
Thank you very much for that. I like the word you said, assessing, right? The quality and value of the work. Okay, thank you very much. We'll play on that idea like you just said now. Yeah, any other contribution as relating to that? What in your own understanding is evaluation? Or in another word, what is evaluation? Yes, Sandy, your mic is on mute. Go ahead.
Okay, for me, evaluation, I would say it's data and information that informs strategic decisions for improvement of problem in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. I like the word you used. You talked about data for strategic decision, right? Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other contribution? What in your own word is evaluation? There are people in this class that have never said anything throughout.
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead,
sorry.
please.
I think evaluation, it's like analyzing as well as collecting information about the project process, like making decision making, like the success of the project, providing information as well as analyzing the project.
Thank you very much for that. I like the word you use. You said analyzing. Okay. So yeah, everything you just all the points, all the points you raised now are what it is when we talk about evaluation. In another word, when you were giving your own definition, another definition came to my thoughts. I've never looked at it that way before. We talk about evaluation as monitoring as checking track to ensure that we are still on track. So while monitoring look at the trend of a particular project, evaluation looks at the depth of your objective. In monitoring, we are just looking at the trend. Are we still on track in relation to our objective, right? That's what monitoring does. We look at the track. In the case of evaluation, we are looking at the depth itself, right? How well are we achieving our objective, right? So that's another point when we look at evaluation. Okay, so let's give some definition as relating to evaluation. So when we talk about evaluation, program evaluation, it can be divided as the systemic collection of information about the activities, characteristics, and outcome of projects for use by people to reduce uncertainty, right? I think one of you raised this now. To reduce uncertainty and to improve effectiveness, right? So when we talk about evaluation, we're talking about to improve and increase the capacity of program activity. Under evaluation, we are looking at, we are assessing the program activity. So we say evaluation is the systematic and objective assessment of an ongoing or completed project. We'll come to that when we want to discuss what evaluation is, types of evaluation. So we'll talk about how it is ongoing or completed. But it is what? A systematic and objective assessment of an ongoing or completed project, right? And the aim is to determine what? the relevance and fulfillment of objective. Like I said, you want to look at how far, what is the depth in the fulfillment of a particular objective. While in monitoring, you are just looking at the trend, right? In evaluation, you want to look at the depth of that particular objective. So basically, that's what evaluation is all about. So in evaluation, it's all about providing information that is credible and useful to enable the incorporation, understand the lesson learned. What have we learned in this particular project? The things in which we have done, what are the lessons that come from it? So basically, that's the essence of evaluation, right? And in evaluation, another definition says it's an assessment as to whether project activity conforms with standards, right? In monitoring, remember, though we're going to explain, the next question I'm going to ask is the difference between monitoring and evaluation, right? So in monitoring, for instance, we talk about looking at the trend itself, right? In our set, we are looking at the milestones as relating to deliverables. That's what we look at in monitoring. In evaluation, we are concerned about the project activity in itself, as the project activity conform with standard, right? We want to study the past operating experiences, right? So that is what a project evaluation is. So why do we evaluate? We evaluate to enhance accountability, right? To provide feedback, to promote sustainability of the institution. I want to talk about to enhance accountability in that space because we are conscious of the fact that our project activity will be assessed at the end of the day. People are more responsive. People are more responsible because they know that we need to report to a particular head in the hierarchy, right? So it enhances accountability. And then it provides feedback on that particular project. Okay, this is what we have done. This is the results we have from it. So we can look at the result and say, okay, what are the sources of this thing? What worked for us? What did not work for us? How do we improve on what has worked for us? How do we avoid those things that did not work for us? So basically, that's what we look at there. And then, like we said, promotion of sustainability. Yesterday, you look at sustainability, and in the space of sustainability, I suppose one of the discourses we say, when we look at sustainability, we ask ourselves, how will this project still be alive? Will it still be functional after we are gone? If you leave this particular space, will this thing still be functional? That's the summary of sustainability itself, right? The entitled sustainability is the continuation of a project even after you are no more in that space. Either the project funders are gone, even the personnel of that project, the current personnel in that project are gone. Is that project still sustainable? Can it still continue after you are no more there? So for you to ensure the fact that your project continues regardless of who and who is there, we'll talk about what? Evaluation. And in that space, we said these are the reasons why we do evaluation, to promote sustainability of the project. So quickly, I want to ask, what then is the difference between projects? So I've raised some of those points, but what then are the difference? What is the difference, the obvious difference between project evaluation and project monitoring? Yes, can we have contribution as relating to that? What's the difference between project monitoring and evaluation? What do you think is the difference?
Morning, doctor. Can I try?
Yeah, go ahead, please, Lindy.
Yeah, I will say, just using the general knowledge, evaluation in most cases is done by external people to come and evaluate the project. But in most cases, monitoring is done by the project manager who is responsible for that particular project. It's an ongoing party evaluation. Sometimes it happens in stages, maybe after certain work has been done, then evaluation, they come and do evaluation while the project is continuing. I'm just using the general knowledge. I'm not sure whether I'm correct. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. You are very correct. And yes, you are correct in the explanation you are giving, and you're also correct in the knowledge you are using. The essence of the class is to use all the knowledge you have already. Like I said in the first class, we are coming from a theoretical angle. You guys are coming from the practical angle. So we meet at the middle and then share those ideas together. So yeah, you are very correct. Yes, any other contribution? The difference between monitoring and evaluation, that's one of the difference is what has been raised now. Evaluation is done by external bodies. Monitoring is mostly done within the internal personnel of a project. Yes, Zandi, your mic is still.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I would say monitoring is focusing on the measurement of the quantity and quality of the implemented activities. That's a monitoring. While the evaluation, it's a process in analyzing or interpret the collected data in the relationship between the result of the project program, the effects produced by projects. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, any other addition? Any addition? Any addition to that? Okay, before I give you some of the points I've raised, that the points you guys have raised are actually fundamental. But before I give you the points I have on monitoring and evaluation, I think what I will do is that I want us to play a video. I know some of us may not look at these things on Moodle, so I'm just going to share one of I just want us to play the video together, and then we'll pick it up from there. Let me share my system audio. Okay.
Monitoring and evaluation. But don't be fooled. The fact that the term monitoring and evaluation often goes together and is called M&E is somewhat misleading. It is true that monitoring and evaluation share similar tools and methods. While they are interrelated, monitoring and evaluation are clearly separate activities. In fact, monitoring is very different from evaluations. They are usually carried out by different people and differ in how often they are carried out. Let's look at that in more detail. Monitoring and evaluations. Let's first take a look at what monitoring is. In a nutshell, monitoring is like the dashboard of your car when you're driving. It tells you how fast you go, how much petrol you have left, or maybe if one of the car's doors has been left open. In governments and development organizations, monitoring is the regular and systematic collection, analysis, reporting, and use of information about programs, policies, or services. Monitoring is concerned with the performance of a program, a policy, or a service. And unlike an evaluation, it is typically conducted internally. That means monitoring is carried out by staff that works inside an organization. And unlike evaluations, it is a continuous process. That means it is carried out non-stop during and sometimes after an activity. Monitoring typically supports the management of programs, policies, and services, and helps to manage risks. Evaluations, on the other hand, are like the occasional check-up of your car. Evaluations are a systematic and impartial assessment of expected and achieved accomplishments. Evaluations take a step back to look, as the term suggests, at the overall value of a program, a policy, or a service. Evaluations are usually conducted externally. That means evaluations are carried out by evaluators or specialists with no link to an organization. Having independent external evaluators should ensure a more unbiased judgment. And unlike monitoring, an evaluation is not carried out all the time, but is a one-off activity. Typically, evaluations are carried out during or at the end of an activity. And evaluations are more systematic than monitoring. Here are some typical questions an evaluation attempts to answer. Is a program, a policy, a service, or an organization relevant? Does it suit the priorities and policies of the target group? Is it effective? Does it achieve results? Is it efficient? Does it achieve results at reasonable costs? Does it have impact? What real difference has a program, a policy, or a service made for beneficiaries? Is it sustainable? Will positive change continue once funding is cut? That is why evaluations tend to be broader in scope than monitoring.
Okay. Thank you very much. I suppose you've seen that video and the points that's been raised there. All this, the video itself is also on Moodle. It's part of the video, the links, the videos I posted for this session. You can look at some of those videos that were posted there. It also gives you different notion as relating to that. Like as been raised in the video, remember we talk about evaluation to ensure sustainability, to provide feedback and the likes. And when we look at the difference between monitoring and evaluation, it also speaks to, the video also speaks to what our colleagues has also raised here as the difference between monitoring and evaluation. Like we said, under monitoring, monitoring is what is a continuous process. We say it's a continuous process of checking. I like that word, so I keep repeating it. The contribution you made. So it's a continuous process of checking, observing, and ensuring that a project's milestones and deliverables are met, ensuring that projects are still on track. That is what monitoring is. While evaluation is a once-off process, right? It happens either in the middle of a project or at the end of a project, and that's what it is. And then we'll talk about evaluation being evaluation being external and monitoring being internal. And then we'll talk about performance over value, right? Evaluation is on performance, while monitoring is on performance of the project, while evaluation is on the value of the project in itself. So that's the summary of the video itself. Now, when it comes to the point I've raised there as the features of monitoring and evaluation, as well as what differentiates monitoring and evaluation, we've talked about the fact that evaluation is periodic, right? It's either midterm or end of the projects. Monitoring is continuous. Monitoring ensures that inputs, activities, and outputs process it ensures that they are all according to plan, right? Monitoring determines whether the inputs are optimally utilized. Documents process using selected indicators. The documents process using selected indicators. That's what monitoring does. And those indicators are always the milestones. And then it ensures that all activities are carried out by the right person and in time. It talks about performance. All these things are all relating to performance. Provide records of input, activities, and output. In ones of deviation from objective. Remember when we said you must stay in track, right? Monitoring ensure that we stay in track, we don't move away from the objective of that project. It also assists in decision making, right? And like we said, it is always internal and it's a self-assessment. It is internal, it's self-assessment done by the project manager and the project personnel within the project itself. And then when we talk about evaluation, we said it is periodic, it is strategic. In that space, you ask yourself, are the right things being done? Remember, I talk about the depths. You are looking at the depth of your project itself, right? You look at the rationale and justification, you look at the impact of the project. What is the impact of the project? That's where you talk about the value of that project. Is that project really achieving its aim, right? Within the particular environment in which that project is. So the first is look at the strategy, right, in evaluation. So that's that, rationale and the impact. And then you look at the operation itself. In operation, you ask yourself the question, are things being right? First in strategy, you look at, are things being done? Are the right things being done? And then in operation, you look at, are things being right in this time? In this space, you look at the effectiveness of the activities in achieving the expected outcome, the efficiency in optimizing resources. How well are your resources being used? Are clients being satisfied? Or is there customer dissatisfaction and the likes? And then it's like we said, it's an external analysis, right? And then also another evaluation, you look at learning. There are better ways of doing that thing. Yes, we may be achieving the objective. It may be efficient, but can we be more efficient? If, for instance, we are using 50,000 rands to train 100 people, can we still use 50,000 rands to train 150 people, right? These are things we look at. We look at the alternatives, right? We look at what is available for us, and then we look at lessons learned, right? What have we learned from the project itself? From what we did right, what did we learn from it? From what we did wrong, what do we learn from it? So basically, these are some of the things we look at. Then we look at the project impact itself, right? There's another video on outcomes and outputs, outcomes, and impact. Please try and look at that video. I will not play the video for the sake of time. So please just try and look at that video. It's on Moodle. It talks about project impact, project outcome, and the likes. Or better still, maybe let's see if we can play that. Just to explain some of these points. Okay, I think it's this.
Introducing the basic concepts of monitoring and evaluation. In this video, we will talk about an easy way to tell the difference between an input, activity, output, outcome, and impact. A fun way to visualize these concepts is to imagine someone walking on a beach. He sees a bed of rocks and thinks it would be a good idea to throw rocks in the water. The rocks represent the financial, human, physical, and material resources that are available to the organization. These are the inputs that would be fed into a given program or project. He makes the decision to throw a rock in the sea. The act of throwing the rock represents the activities of a program. Once the rock hits the water, they make splashes. The splash is the immediate effect of the activity of throwing the rock. In other words, the splash represents the outputs and is the immediate result of the completion of program activities. Outputs are the products and/or services which results from the completion of activities. The initial splashes, which are the outputs, create a ripple effect on the water. The ripples represent outcomes. Outcomes are the short-term and medium-term effects of the outputs. In other words, what changes occur due to the output. Lastly, the horizon represents the long-term goals, impact, objective, or the lasting changes that we hope to achieve by the program's intervention. It is the result of all the activities, outputs, and outcomes that achieves the goal. So, to summarize, Inputs are the financial, human, technical, community, and local resources. Activities are what is done with the inputs, that is, the actions, processes, events, tools, meetings, and trainings. Outputs are the tangible products of the program activities. They are the deliverables, such as policy papers drafted and schools built. Outcomes are what the project expects to accomplish at the beneficiary level. It is the intended or achieved short-term and medium-term effects of an intervention's outputs. Goal or impact is the highest end result. This is the change expected over the long term. In the logical framework, the different steps are ordered sequentially. Activities feed into outputs, which lead to outcomes, which achieve the overall goals. To give a practical example, in a sexual reproductive health program, the human and financial resources are committed to carry out trainings and marketing campaigns on sexual reproductive health that will lead to increased knowledge in this area. This will result in people practicing safer sex, which will lead to a healthier population with reduced HIV, AIDS, and STD rates. This is an overly simple example, but it does illustrate the point well. Hope you now have a clearer understanding of the basic monitoring and evaluation concepts. Thanks for watching.
Okay. So we continue. So those are some of the concepts that it's interesting that you know, the outcomes, the outputs, impacts, and the likes, right? Okay. So I'll just move on. Are we okay, guys? I hope I'm not too fast.
Yes, we are.
Okay. So when we talk about the monitoring systems in a project, so what are the basic principles of developing a monitoring system? There are things that need to be, there are some principles or some guidelines, as quote and unquote, that is essential when developing a monitoring system for a particular project. And this is very essential. So quickly, we just look at that. These are some of the things in which you must be familiar with when developing a monitoring system. We said, one, it must be demand-driven. It must be simple and easy. It must be participatory, not for policing or punishment, but rather for learning. It must be a mixed method, as a mix of quantitative and qualitative data, aggregation of data, two-way feedback, meaningful use of analyzed information at source. What do we mean by all these things as the principle of project monitoring system? When you are to develop a monitoring system for your project, when we talk about it being demand-driven, we imply that you don't just come up with a monitoring system because you know that there's a need for a monitoring system. No, you must ensure that you are coming up with a monitoring system as relating to the needs of your particular project. So you monitor based on the needs of a particular project. And we say that projects are relative. They are relative to the objective of the project itself, and they're also relative as relating to the environment in which that project is being carried out. Like we said, it is possible for you to have the same project in two different communities, but your monitoring system will not be the same, right? Why? Because you are going to be looking at the peculiarity of that particular community, will determine how you are monitoring your particular project. So that's what we imply by it must be demand-driven, right? There has to be a need for that particular monitoring system for you to develop that particular monitoring system. The next point for you to consider when you are designing your monitoring system or developing your monitoring system is that the principle of easy does it. It must be easy and it must be simple. In most cases, we tend to complicate things by coming up with concepts or ideas that are very, very complicated or advanced or complex, as the word may be. But in designing your monitoring system, you must ensure that it's as simple itself, right? There's always the mentality that the more complex it is, the more accepted it to be within maybe your stakeholders and the likes. But no, the idea is that it must be as simple and easy as possible. And then we'll talk about it being participatory. People must be involved. You must design your projects, the monitoring system in such a way that people can be involved in it. As much as possible, there has to be the involvement of the stakeholders. Everybody needs to contribute to the monitoring system. It should not be a draconian or an authoritarian kind of system. Authoritarian, when we talk about authoritarianism, we're talking about a situation whereby you are the Lord, you are the king and the Lord of the universe of your project. No, it should not be that way. You should allow contribution from everybody, all the stakeholders, the people working with you, right? Your colleagues, the community itself. Everybody needs to be involved in the development of your monitoring system. And also in the monitoring system itself, everybody needs to be involved. So that's what it is. And then when we talk about not for policing, nor punishment, rather for learning, it's as the word implies. When you do a monitoring system, the idea of the monitoring system is not to police the workers, right? The personnel involved in that project. It's not to police them, and it's not to punish offenders. No, you're not doing it so that when you see a particular error, then you give them a query letter, right? Or you sack them, as or depending on what's the punishment system you want to you carry out. No, the essence of monitoring is for you to learn. It's for us to learn from the activity, from the project activity as we go on. It's for us to learn. And then we'll talk about the idea of mixed method, right? Mixed quantitative and qualitative data. What we mean by qualitative data are information that has to do with words, right? They are qualitative data. When you start asking for opinion, when we go to the field and we start, what's your opinion on this particular project? What's your opinion on this particular activity? These are qualitative data. They are just word of mouth. Perceptions, right? They are word of mouth. How do you feel about these things? They are all word of mouth. So these are qualitative data. And then we'll talk about quantitative data. We're talking about the data that has to do with numbers, numerical, right? First, you know the word of mouth. Second, you want to know the value of that particular word of mouth, right? Of that particular thing that you are monitoring. So there has to be numbers too. There has to be number trend. We should be able to say this is the percentage based on the activity we are doing. We have 30% acceptance, 20% acceptance, 100% acceptance. We should be able to put numbers to our monitoring. It is not just words alone. There has to be the use of numbers too. So it's in that place, it's all about mixed method. I suppose when you want to do your during your projects, I think during the topic on research method, you must have discussed quantitative and qualitative method as well as mixed method. And yes, in the course of the semester, you'll be doing your projects, and some of you will be using this, the mixed method as your research methodology. So basically, in your project monitoring system, one of the principles is to ensure that you use a mixed method. Don't use just a single method in it. And then there's the aggregation of data. In the aggregation of data, now you mix it together, you look at those data, you should be able to link up the data that you have together. And then when we talk about a two-way feedback, the implication of a two-way feedback is that you should be able to give feedback to the people as well as those people that both external and internal to that particular project. It should not be a one-way feedback system whereby maybe it's from the top down. The monitoring system is just we as the project manager are observing the personnel in the project. No, it should be a two-way feedback in the sense that the personnel are giving feedback to the managers, and the manager also giving feedback to the personnel. So that should be how your monitoring system should operate. It should not, like I said, it should not be authoritarian. It should not be a situation whereby you are the only one. The monitoring system is a top-down approach, but it should also be top-down and also bottom-up. What we mean bottom-up, it means that the people at the ground level are able to give feedback to the people at the top level. The people at the top level are also able to give feedback to people at the ground level. So that is how it should operate within the monitoring system. And like we said, it should be meaningful use of the analyzed information at source. When the information is gathered, there has to be a judicious use of those information. So basically that's when we discuss the principles that are involved in developing a monitoring system. You must ensure that all these things comes to play when you develop a monitoring system. So now, having said this, what are then the steps that are required in developing a monitoring system? So now, the first thing to do is to identify the different units involved in planning and implementation. Remember, we talk about your monitoring system needs to be demand driven. So first you identify what? The different units that are involved, right? In planning and implementation. You have to identify the units involved. What are the departments? What are the personnel? What are the sections involved in your project? So there has to be an identification of that. Then, yes? Is somebody saying something? Can I continue?
No, I was connected because I get lost. No, I'm not saying anything.
Okay. So first you said you must identify the different units involved. Second, you must identify the items on which feedback is required. It goes back to this first point that we raised here, right? We said your monitoring system has to be what? Demand driven. That is the first point you must consider. It must be demand driven. So like we said, you identify the units and then you identify the items to which feedback is required. In most cases, it's not going to be the entirety of the project that feedback is required, right? So you identify where feedback is required. Now that you have identified the items in which feedback is required, the next thing is to do is to what? To develop a reporting medium, right? What is the reporting medium? You develop that. And then the next thing after developing the reporting medium, that's the communication, the channels of communication. That's what we imply by the reporting medium now. You develop the channels of communication that is required. You develop the chain of progression, right? The hierarchy, right, of that reporting. How do you want reporting? It's going to be just directly to a particular office, or so you decide on how the reporting medium is going to be. And then you develop the reporting periods. Is it going to be weekly? Is it going to be daily? Is it going to be annually? And the likes. We spoke about these periods when we were discussing project documentation. So you have to develop the reporting period, and then you also assign responsibility of reporting at different levels. Who is responsible for reporting what at each level? So that has to be decided. Who is responsible for developing what and for reporting what? So in that side, if you have decided already who is responsible for doing a particular activity within the project, it becomes easy for you to also decide on who is responsible for reporting at different level. And then what is going to be the process? The processing and the analyzing of the report. How do we process the report? How do we analyze the report? That has to be decided upon, right? Now that the data is available, somebody has reported on the data. How do we process that data? How do we analyze what we have at the end of the day? And then identifying the critical and the unreliable areas in implementation. Once the report comes back, we can decide, okay, which are the critical areas? Where do we need to concentrate upon, right? And then where do we need to put more energy on? And then once that has been done, there's a need also to provide feedback to correct the measure. If we identify a particular problem, there has to be feedback on that particular problem, right? There has to be the provision of feedback on each of the items that are observed. So if your reporting is weekly, there has to be feedback provided weekly. If your reporting is monthly, there has to be feedback provided monthly. So this is the progression itself, and you cannot skip any of the stage, right? You have to follow these stages, and in most cases, these stages are they work almost together. That in most cases we may not even identify the difference of stages. But basically, these are the steps in which we follow when we carry out monitoring. Right? So the next slide. When we talk about the frameworks for monitoring and evaluation, what are the frameworks for monitoring and evaluation? So there has to be the need for you to look at the levels. In looking at the framework, we look at the levels of monitoring and evaluation. The concept in which the video we play showed us what it implies when we talk about the inputs, when we talk about the outputs, the outcomes, as well as the impact of our project, right? And when we come about the framework for monitoring and evaluation at this point, under the inputs, we are looking at what? The resources that we are supposed to put into the project, right? What are the resources we need to put into the project? And in this place, we look at the budget constraint in itself. We look at the material, the human resources, the capital resources, and the likes, the human and material resources that we put into the project. And in this place, under the input, it is always a continuous thing, right? It is continuous at that point. Monitoring at that place, it's continuous. And then when it comes to the outputs, we've discussed outputs already. They are the activities that are provided by the projects, which leads to what? To the outcomes, right? The outputs of the project, which are the immediate results of our inputs, right? The immediate result of our inputs, the frequency of those can be what? It can be quarterly, it can be weekly, depending on the project in which we are carrying out. It can be monthly and the likes. So basically, that is the output. And then when it comes to the outcome talks about the change in behavior of that particular project. What is the change in behavior or skills as a result of the project that has been implemented? In other words, we're talking about the change in behavior as a result of the outputs. And in the frequency of the evaluation of that, it's always short to immediate to medium term. What's the medium term benefits of that? What the medium term change in behavior, the objective that have been achieved? So basically, that's how you look at that. And when it comes to impact is always a long-term assessment. You want to look at what is the long-term change that has transpired as a result of your project, right? What's the long-term change? Outcomes is always a short-term change or medium-term change. The impact is always what? A long-term change. So basically, that's that on the framework, right? And then when in talking about that again, you also look at you look at your indicators, right? In looking at your input, output, outcomes, and impact. When you look at the framework, these are the things in which you look at in reporting that. First, you look at the indicators itself. You know, remember we talk about mixed method, both your numbers as well as your words, right? You look at the indicators. What is the number? What is the result? As relating to the goals, as relating to the outputs, as relating to the outcome, as relating to the impact. You look at the indicators of that. You look at the definition. How do you define your goal? How do you define your outcome, the outcome and the output? In this place, how will you calculate it? That's what we imply there. How will you say, okay, we have achieved this, right? What would be the baseline of your analysis. Baseline is to look at it from where you are as relating to where you are now, where you were when you started the project and where you are now 6 months down the line, or 7 months down the line, or 1 year down the line, right? So what's the current value of your project as relating to where you used to be? That is looking at the baseline. And then you look at the targets. What is the goal of your project? What is the target value of your project? So that's what you look at. And then again, we ask ourselves in this space, how will you source for data, right? In sourcing for data, it goes back to when we discuss the steps, right? Where you identify the departments that are involved, the units that are involved, and where the data is required, right? And then what is the frequency? The frequency of measurement. How will you do the measurement? What's the frequency? It goes back to this slide. I'll say at input level, it is continuous, the frequency continuous. At output level, it is quarterly. At outcome, is short term or medium term. Impact level, it is what? Long term. So these are things in which we need to determine. Now, you look at the frequency as relating to the goal, frequency as relating to the outcomes, frequency as relating to the output. So that's what you look at. And then who is responsible? We have discussed this when we look at the steps in monitoring and evaluation. Who is responsible? Responsibility in the sense of who is responsible to measure that particular project or that particular activity. Who is supposed to measure? And then the reporting. Where are we reporting to? To whom are we reporting? Right? So first, we need to determine who is responsible, and then we need to determine our outlets. Our outlet in the sense of where do we report to who do we report, and the like. So these are some of the things in which we need to be familiar with. So in evaluation, there are some questions in which we need to ask ourselves when we come to evaluation. First, we ask ourselves, what are the progress that has been made? This is key in evaluation. What's the progress that has been made? Were the desired outcome achieved? If they are achieved, how have they been achieved? Right? If they are not achieved, why are they not achieved? Right? So these are questions in which you ask yourself, right? Why have they not achieved? Have they not been achieved? And then how are they supposed to be achieved? And then, does the project result justify the project inputs? Right? Does it justify? Is there a justification for the resources that have been put into the project and the results we are getting from that project? Is there a justification? And then, are there ways that project activities can be refined to achieve better outcome? Right? Remember, I was given an example just now. We used 50,000 rands and we trained 100 people. Is there a way for us to train 150 people with the same amount of money? Right? So these are the things you look at when you evaluate. So specifically, you look at what exactly are you going to be evaluating, right? Just the way in monitoring, you look at the units you want to evaluate and why you want to evaluate them. Like we said, it must be demand-driven, right? Evaluation also is demand-driven. You also say, what exactly are you going to be evaluating? What resources mean for this project? That is what? On calculation, when we say definition. Remember, the indicator is what are we evaluating. The definition is what resources mean for this project. What do we mean by sources in this project, right? And our definition of sources is also relative to the environment we find ourselves. And then what information or indication will show that we are successful? How do we measure sources? That's what it implies. What will sources mean and how will we measure sources? And then what are the resources? What resources do we need to measure sources? Realistically, what resources do we have to carry out this evaluation? So these are the questions in which we must ask ourselves in the course of evaluation. So quickly we want to look at what are then the types of evaluation. There are different types of evaluation that we must be familiar with. I suppose we are familiar with the formative and the summative evaluation in most cases, but here we are discussing 5 different types of evaluation. You look at the formative, you look at the process, you look at the summative, outcome as well as the impact evaluation. When we talk about the formative evaluation, it is what? In the course of the projects. Formative evaluation is carried out in the course of the project, right? You tend to look at, okay, are we still within course, right? So that's what we do here. We provide guidelines to improve that particular project, because it is carried out while the project is still ongoing. It is easy for us to, when we come up with the final results of that particular evaluation, it is carried out to improve on the particular projects in which we are currently embarking on. That is the formative evaluation. Formative evaluation is carried out in the course of the project. And the process evaluation determines whether a project is delivering its intended targets, right? Are we on course? Are we actually getting the objective we set out to achieve? That is what we do under process evaluation, looking at what the activities of that particular project. So you see, both formative and process evaluation are carried out what? During the course of the project, right? They're carried out during the course of a project. And then we have the summative evaluation and the outcome evaluation. The summative and the outcome evaluation are carried out at the end of the project, right? Formative and process during the project, and summative and outcome carried out at the end of that particular project. So for summative evaluation, we are asking ourselves, have we achieved what we want to achieve? Did the program actually work, right? So at that place, it's a summary judgment, right? We want to achieve this. Have we achieved it at the end of the project? So that's what we look at, right? At the closure of the project, we ask ourselves this. And then you look at outcomes, right? What's the output from the project? Has it led to a particular change that we anticipated, the anticipated change that we wanted? So we focus on what? Observable condition of the target audience of our project, right? To see if we have actually, if there has been a change as implied in that project. So that's what we look at outcome evaluation. And then when it comes to, like I said, both summative and outcome at the end of the project. And then the impact is what? The long-term examination, right? When we look at the behavioral change as relating to our project, the long-term behavioral change of that particular project. So like we said, summative, outcome, and impact evaluation are appropriate to conduct when the project either has been completed or has been ongoing for what? A substantial period of time, right? If it has been ongoing for, let's say, the past 5 years or the past 2 years, 3 years, then you carry out an outcome evaluation and as well as an impact evaluation. So basically that's when we discuss evaluation. And then when we look at evaluation by, this one we just did now is evaluation by time frame. I think I need to write that here. Evaluation types. Evaluation types by time frame, right? The formative, the process, the summative, the outcome, the impact. These are evaluation time by time frame. Why evaluation type by formats, right? This is how we put them now. Now by timing, when we talk about formats, now we're looking at, first we look at formats by timing, we look at format by agency, and then we look at formats by stages. So when you look at by timing, we said formative evaluation is done during, summative evaluation is done at the end of the project. That's when you evaluate. And then when you talk about evaluation by agency, that's by the action itself, right? By who are those people that are going to be doing the evaluation, right? In this place, we're looking at both internal as well as external evaluation. The evaluation that is done within the organization itself. They're familiar with this, maybe by And then by the external organization, by evaluation done by the external bodies, some ones are done by maybe an outsider, maybe the regulatory agency of that particular project itself, or the stakeholders themselves, or an inspector, right? So these ones are done by external body, people that are external to the particular project itself. So basically, that's evaluation done by the type of evaluation by agency. And then we have evaluation by stages. On stages, we talk about the ongoing during the implementation. We talk about the terminal at the end of the project, and then the expose. The expose itself is project. That's in that space we're talking about the impacts, right? Looking at after a long period of time. That's after a project have been completed for a long period of time. You come to evaluate what has transpired. For instance, the project that happened last year, and then maybe 2 years down the line, you come back to that particular environment to ask yourself if what as the intention of the project has been achieved over time. What's the effect of what we have done over time? Because our projection, for instance, I remembering in our first class, we talked about a project that I want to do in the class. We said we are going to use, we are going to train youths for crop production. And the idea is that we want to create employment in KZN. Now, we have ended the projects. When we look at the formative evaluation of that project, in the course of the project, we knew that we trained 50 people in 6 months, and we trained 100 people in 1 year, right? At the end of the project, maybe after 1 year, we realized that, okay, we have trained 100 people, right? So the first evaluation we did in 6 months was a formative evaluation because it was done while the project was ongoing, because it was a 1 year project. It was ongoing. At the end of the project, we looked at the project, we look at the outcome, and we realized that we have trained 100 people, right? And these 100 people were satisfied with what we have done. But the central aim of our project is to create employment in KZN. So now I want to do the expo factor evaluation. What we're going to be doing is that maybe 2 years down the line, we go back to KZN and evaluate what is the impact of our project 2 years down the line. It is expected that 2 years down the line, the 100 people we have trained should have trained possibly 1,000 people. So you see, we can evaluate and say, okay, now we realize that we trained 100 people 10 years ago, but now these 100 people have trained 500 more. So you see, we can look at that project in a long term, right? So that's what we do at evaluation at stages, looking at impact. And then when we come back to evaluation tools, these are familiar things in which you know. So I don't think I want to waste too much time on this. I'll just read out some few here. These are the things that are required when we carry out evaluation: our checklists, our feedback form, statistical reports, right? Graphic presentations, staff meetings, either your staff meeting is weekly, monthly, or annual, right? You need focus group discussions, surveys, reports, progress reports and statistics, and the likes. These are some of the things in which are required for your evaluation, right? Meetings and review, and the likes. So these are the few tools that are required. So when it comes to evaluation, how do you carry out evaluation? The guidelines for effective evaluation. I've itemized 6 things that we need to look at when carrying out effective evaluation. First, we must engage. In the engagement, you must engage all the stakeholders, right? You must ensure that all the partners are involved, everybody is involved when it comes to evaluation. So there has to be the engagement of all stakeholders. You must describe the program. There has to be clarity in your description of the program objective, the program goal. There has to be clear description of that. There has to be a design. There has to be a design structure, right? You design the evaluation, you design the ethics that is required, you design the visibility reports of the project and the likes. So everything there has to be a design that you carry out. right? And then you gather your information, right? And in the places of gathering information, we talk about gathering, looking at the strengths, right, of your results. You come up with the strength of the project, the weakness of the project, your recommendation, and the likes. That is where you discuss that. And then you justify your conclusion, right? That's the justification of whatever reports you came up with. At this place, you are linking the results together. And then there has to be, you must deliberately ensure that the evaluation produce lessons that must be observed. What are the lessons learned? You must be able to share the lessons that that you learned, that you carried out from that particular project. So basically, these are the guidelines to look at. You must engage stakeholders to ensure that all partners invested in, they are invested in what will be learned from the evaluation. You must describe the program to clarify the objective and the goals. You must design the evaluation, and you must ensure that the evaluation is useful, the design is useful, is simple. We'll talk about the fact that you must ensure that it's easy and simple and the likes. And then on and on, it must justify. And then you must deliberately ensure that the evaluation produce lessons that can be shared, right? So these are what to look at. And then when you talk about evaluation standard, we said there are a property standard, there are utility standard, there are visibility standard, and there are accuracy standard. These are the 4 categories of standards that of evaluation. When we talk about evaluation standard, when we talk about property standard, it focuses on ensuring that evaluation are conducted legally, ethically, and regards to promoting the welfare of those involved, right? Evaluation has to be legal and it has to be ethically done. And the idea of an evaluation is to enhance the project itself, enhance it. If it's a formative evaluation, to enhance the delivery system of that particular project. If it's a summative evaluation or an outcome or an impact evaluation, it's also to gather lessons to improve on subsequent projects at the end of the day. So that's what we mean by that standard. So when we talk about Ucc standard of evaluation, we're also concerned about it is intended to ensure that the evaluation will meet the information need of intended users, right? It must be useful. That's just a simple word there. When we talk about utility standard, your evaluation must be useful. We must be able to use it. If your intended user cannot use the results that you come out with after the evaluation, then it is not necessary as it is. So it must meet the utility standard. And then your evaluation must also meet the visibility standard. In this term, we are talking about the intended, what are they intended to make? You must make sure that the evaluation meets the scope and method of that particular project itself. And so in this sense, we're talking about it must be realistic. Your evaluation must be realistic. The scope and the method that you need to use must be realistic. We must be able to carry out that particular evaluation. That's what implied by visibility standard, right? We must be able to carry it out. You must not design a particular evaluation that becomes cumbersome or complex, that it becomes difficult to carry out that particular evaluation. That's what we imply by that. So it must be realistic. The scope and the method must be realistic, right? And then the accuracy standard, you cannot overemphasize the accuracy. Every method that is used and every instrument that are used must be accurate. The data that you get from it must also be accurate. Your description and your justification, your conclusion must be consistent with the data that you have. So you cannot report something that is different from the actual data or what exactly that is on ground. So basically these are the standard in which we consider when doing evaluation. It must be legal, it must be ethical, that's propriety. It must promote the welfare of those involved. It must be useful, it must be realistic, and it must be accurate. So that's that. And then we'll talk about evaluation phases. There's evaluation at planning level, implementation, completion, and then the dissemination of the report. That's what I mean by that. There has to be the planning stage where you tend to determine, at the planning stage, you determine what you want to evaluate, how you want to evaluate it, who is going to be involved in your evaluation, right? That's what you do at the planning stage, right? You ensure these questions are met. Who is going to be involved? How will you evaluate? At what time? What's the time period for your evaluation? So the entire logistics to your evaluation is done at you determine that at the planning stage, right? And then at the implementation stage, that's where you carry out the particular evaluation itself, right? It may be formative, it may be process, right? At the implementation stage. And then also at the completion stage of your project, also there's evaluation that goes out there. That's where you do the summative and the outcome evaluation, the summative outcome and impact evaluation at that point. And then the final stage is that, like we said, it must be useful, right? But if it is useful, then there has to be a channel for communication. There has to be the dissemination of that particular result or your particular conclusion in the evaluation. That's when we talk about the dissemination and the reporting phase. So basically, that's what you do at that stage. So I'm not going to waste time on that. These are just the basic stage. There has to be a planning. The planning stage, there's evaluation at the planning stage. There's evaluation at the implementation stage of your project. There's evaluation at the completion stage. And then there's the dissemination of that particular report. And then when we talk about the final thing that we're going to look at is the approaches to evaluation. There's the participatory approach to evaluation, and there's the empowerment approach to evaluation. When we talk about the participatory approach, we talk about actively engaging the community in all stages of your evaluation process, as the word implies, right? So participatory evaluation, actively engage the community in all stages of the evaluation process. This process that we just did at the planning, the implementation, the completion, and the reporting stage. That's what happens in the participatory approach. And then in the empowerment approach to evaluation, it helps to equip the program personnel with the necessary skill to conduct their own evaluation and ensure that programs run effectively. This one, as the word implies, empowerment, right? Participatory and empowerment. Let's look at some of those approach. So under participatory approach, right? Like we said, it helps improve the program performance by involving the stakeholders in the design, right, and decision making. You involve the stakeholders. Everybody, when we talk about stakeholders, you are familiar with what that implies. They are involved in the design as well as the decision making, acknowledging and addressing a asymmetric level of power and voice among stakeholders. It's also useful using multiple and varied methods, having an action component so that evaluation findings are useful for the program end user. That's what happens in the participatory evaluation. So what are the characteristics of this? So under participatory evaluation, it focuses on the participant ownership, right? It is focused on participant ownership. The evaluation is oriented. It is people oriented. It focuses on the people itself, right? It focuses on the stakeholders that are involved in that particular project. So in that place, you are concerned about the environment and the stakeholders involved. That's under participatory. That's one fundamental feature of the participatory approach. And the participatory approach is also about inputs, right? It sought input from the participants, the stakeholders itself. It emphasizes on identifying lessons learned to help improve the program implementation, right? That's what it emphasizes on that participatory approach, right? It emphasizes on lesson learned, and then the evaluation design is flexible and determined during the group process. It's flexible because at this point, you know, you are taking information from external bodies, from the participants, right? The environment, the community members, and the like. So for that reason, it is flexible, right? It is not rigid. It is not rigid. And then it is based on empirical data. It's based on what is happening. It's based on everyday happenings within your the community or the project environment in which you find yourself. So that's what it is based on. And then we said stakeholders may conduct the evaluation with an outside expert serving as a facilitator. So basically that's under participatory. The focus point here is to know that under participatory, it involves the people. The focus is on the people. It's focused on the community. It's focused on the entire stakeholders that are involved, your fundraiser, your funders, the community members themselves. Everybody is involved in this space. And for that reason, it is more of a democratic space, whereby everybody is involved in the evaluation. So that's what happens in this space. And then there are steps that we need to look at when we discuss the participatory evaluation. We must identify who should and want to be involved. Who should be involved? We have to identify who should be involved. And then we have to identify who wants to be involved, right? We must clarify the participants, right? In a participant clarification, we'll talk about the expectation. What do we expect from each person in the evaluation process? We have to define the priorities because it is involve everybody. It is easy for us to lose focus, right? Because everybody is involved. So for that reason, there has to be a definition, a clear definition of the priorities. What exactly do you want to evaluate? We must make that clear. And then we must identify the indicators that provide the information we need. We must agree on the methodology, right? Everybody needs to agree on the methodology involved. In that space, we need to agree on the method, we need to agree on the time, we need to agree on who is responsible for what, right? So all this needs to be agreed upon. Who is reporting? Who are we reporting to? That has to be agreed upon. And then we move to the collection of information. And once information is collected, the natural trend is what? Is to analyze that information. And once analysis of the information is done, we also need to agree on how the information will be used. How do we use the information? Who is going to use the information? And how do we also disseminate that information? And then we must clarify on all this. So basically that's the step in which we look at under the participatory approach. So like I said, what to note under the participatory approach is that it involves everybody, right? It involves all your stakeholders in the discourse in participatory. And then empowerment, like we said, it has to do with what? Improving, right? Improving the personnel of your project. So under empowerment evaluation, it has to do with how to ensure that the success of the project itself. How do you ensure the success of your program? So under empowerment, you look at these steps. First, you take stock of the program and determine where you stand. What is your strength and what is your weakness? Remember, under empowerment, you want to improve on the general performance of the project itself, right? So you take stock of where you are, what is your strength, and what are your strengths. Practically, what you are doing here is that you're carrying out your SWOT analysis, right? You look at your strengths, you look at your weakness, and then you establish your goals for the future, right? This is our strength, this is our weakness. This is where we want to go. What is the goal for the future for your project, right? And then when you have determined the goals for the future, you also develop strategies to help determine what are the strategies to help determine our strengths, right? And our weakness. How do we determine that? We have to come up with strategies to determine that. And then we help program participants decide on how to gather evidence that are needed for the progress towards achieving our goal. How do we determine, how do we decide on and gather the evidence needed to document our progress towards achieving our goal? So basically that's what you do under your empowerment evaluation. right? And then the basic characteristics of empowerment evaluation, right? Community ownership of the design. It's all talks about value improvements in people and program. It's all about inclusion of appropriate participants, right? You have to include the appropriate participants for your projects at all levels. It's all about democratic participation. It's all about commitment to social justice and fair allocation of resources and opportunities. The use of community knowledge, use of evidence, building capacity, accountability to funders' expectation. These are some of the features of empowerment evaluation. And then when you do evaluation, questions to ask when evaluating community engagement. So these are some of the questions in which we ask. Are the right community member at the table, right? Does the process and the structure meets all, does the process and the structure of meeting allow for all voices to be heard? That is when you look at how democratic is your process, right? How are community members involved in developing the program and intervention? That we need to ask. And then how are community members also involved in the implementation, right? How are community members involved in the evaluation of data, evaluation and data analysis? And then what kind of learning has occurred for both community members and everybody involved in your project? So these are 6 questions you ask yourself. Who are the people that are supposed to be involved? Are the people involved, will their voices be heard? Do those people involved, what is the intervention strategy? And how will those intervention strategies be carried out? How are those members going to evaluate, right? That's how are community members involved, how will they carry out the evaluation and data analysis? And then what are the lessons learned? And what are the kind of lessons that are supposed to occur for the community in which the project is being carried out? So these are some of the things you can just read up on all these things as once I post it on Moodle, right? So when it comes to project assessments, it's the same thing. We've discussed all these assessments. When we look at assessments, it may be ongoing, it may be final. When we talk about formative and summative, it may be process-oriented or project-oriented. When we talk about process-oriented, we're talking about the activity itself. When we talk about product-oriented, we're talking about the outcome itself. It can be diagnostic or judgmental. Diagnostic in the sense that we're trying to find a solution to a particular problem, to fix the problem, and it can be judgmental in the sense that you're just giving a final verdict as relating to that. And then it can also be direct or indirect. That is the indicators, right? It can be direct. It can also be indirect. So basically that's that when we discuss this. And then when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, there are challenges. There are obvious challenges when it comes to doing monitor evaluation for a project. We know these things. We can relate to this thing. It is always difficult to get into commitments when it comes to monitor evaluation. Especially when it comes about empowerment or participatory evaluation, it is difficult to get commitments of external people, external stakeholders to be involved in that particular evaluation or the monitoring itself. Establishing baseline of the beginning of a project, that again can also be a challenge. How do you establish the baselines? How do you identify realistic indicators? How do you define your sources? You know, we'll talk about the sources of a project and how do you determine the sources of that particular project? That itself can be a problem, right? So identifying realistic indicators and then finding the time to do that particular evaluation or the particular monitoring and to stick to that time. If you say that we are going to be doing, if you say that our period is going to be weekly or monthly or daily, sometimes we may start and then we get tired, right? So sticking to the time and finding the time to do monitor evaluation is also a challenge. And then getting feedback from stakeholders can also be another tiresome tax. We are familiar with these things. We are come up with example as relating to our projects and the likes. And then reporting to stakeholders can also be a challenge. The means of reporting can also be a challenge. So these are some of the things, these are some of the challenges when we discuss monitoring and evaluation. Okay, I skipped this slide. I don't know how that happened. That's on assessment, right? When we talk about assessment indicators, we look at the economic factors, we look at the social factors, and we look at the environmental factors in assessment. The economic factor, you look at the markets, what's the demand and supply, what's the financial risks, what's the life cycle or benefit of the project, what's the project's budget itself, what's the internal return ratio, what's the life cycle of costs, the technical advantage, payback period. These are things you look at when you look at the economic factors that you consider in your assessment. And then the social factors you consider in your assessment are the public safety factors, the effect on local development, scale of serviceability, provision of ancillary amenities, public sanitation and the like. These are the physical factors. And then when you look at the environmental factors, you look at effect on water quality, effect on land, ecological factors, effect on air quality, protection of environment and the like. This assessment technically has to do with sustainability, and you discussed this yesterday, right? So in assessment, you look at all these things too, right? As some of the indicated things for project sustainability. So this we discussed yesterday, and that I guess that's the reason I skipped the slide. But yeah, so that's that. We've discussed the challenges of project management, of monitoring and evaluation, as well as assessment. So these are some of the things we want to look at. Okay. So I'm going to open the floor for general question and feedback. If there are questions. This is where I end the slide. I just want to open up the floor for general question and feedback. Okay, quickly before I forget, please make sure that you write your name and student number on the comment section as your attendance. Your name and student number, remember to write it on the comment section as your attendance, right? Please don't forget that before we end the session. Your name, student number on attendance. And like I raised for the benefit of those that are just joining us, week 4, there is a discussion on module that you are supposed to do for week 4. The question has been posted there. You are supposed to address that question. You're supposed to give your comments and then also comments on the comments from others. You need to post, you need to comment, you need to post a minimum of 3 times for you to be qualified as an assessment. And like I said, you are supposed to post your original comments as your first comment. And then your other 2 comments, you comment on other people's comments. You give your own opinion as relating to whatever somebody has posted as they post on that discussion forum. So it's on week 4. So please make sure you do that. And like I said, it's the deadline for that discussion is going to be this Friday, the 20th of August. So please make sure that you've done your own bid before Friday, or not before Friday. Ensure that you populate that space. So a discussion is supposed to be actively going on now on Moodle, right? So please let's go contribute as we continue, right? Okay. So my assignment is due, the submission is due on the 3rd of September. You are familiar with that. Mark's session is due on the 17th of September, and Dr. Heyman's session is due on the 30th of September. So please make sure you do the needful, and Yes, that will be it. Okay. Any question, any contribution before we end the class?
On my side, say, I don't have anything, but the discussion was clear, especially when it's come to describe the monitoring and the evaluation. It was very clear. Now I know that monitoring it include internally, while the evaluation it include externally, meaning that evaluation no link to the organization, but on the monitoring internally involve organization. And therefore, it was also clear that in monitoring, it's a continuous day-to-day ongoing activities. And then on the evaluation, it's a systematic then monitoring. Yeah, it was a lot of information, but I've learned a lot. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much for that feedback. Thank you very much. There's any other person before we end the class? There are people in this class that have not said anything throughout the session itself.
Doc,
yes, go ahead.
Kindly assist me with these parts of the assignment while we're still on it. In the assignment, we are supposed to do a project proposal, kind of, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's a project proposal with, as you have listed, but there's this part that confuses me in the structure that says summary of what you have done.
Okay,
what is it that you want? You want kind of a closeout tissue report. I'm not sure what have I done in terms of the research or in terms of the project.
That's your conclusion, right?
Yes.
Yes, conclusion is summary of what you have written. Let me use that word.
Oh, okay.
What you have written in that assignment. You get?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a summary of what you have written. And then quickly, let me put it out there. It is not a proposal. I did not ask you to write a proposal. It's not a proposal you're writing. If it's my session, I don't have a question in front of me, but this I have an idea of what I asked. I said, pick a particular project of your choice and do a system analysis. Using a system approach, explain the various components of the system approach using a project of your choice, right? That's part A. Then part B of that assignment, I said, do a SWOT analysis of your project. I think that's the two things I said you should do. And I said that for you to answer that in your introduction, what is expected in your introduction is that you can just explain, you can define what a system analysis is, the system approach is, right? And then you tell us your projects. For instance, if I'm writing the project, I'm going to say, okay, the system approach is A, B, C, and D. For this assignment, I will be using this particular project. This is the reason for the project. For instance, I may say, okay, my project is on, what's the name of our project again? 2021 Diploma class empowerment, crop empowerment project. Then I will explain the reason for that project. This project is to, or better say, I will explain the goal of the project. The project is to empower the youth in KZN, right? And then I will state where we are doing the project. So the project empower the youth in KZN. It is located, we are going to be doing the project in Etequini. Are you getting that? So that is my introduction. Then I will end that introduction by saying that in this assignment, I will be then you restate what you want to do in that particular project. Sorry. So I will restate what I want to do in that particular project by saying that, okay, in this assignment, I will be carrying out a system analysis of my project, as well as carrying out a SWOT analysis of my project. I will discuss a system approach of my project, as well as a SWOT analysis of my project. I don't know if my introduction makes sense. Did you get my introduction?
It really makes sense.
Okay, so you see,
It's made sense, Doc. Say we as field workers, we call it a project proposal. Hence, I'm saying it's a project proposal. It's what we submit to our supervisors in request of doing those projects. You see. Yeah, I think I'm using the wrong term in the wrong platform.
no, that's fine. That's fine. Now I get that. In my own understanding of a project proposal, it carried out the entirety of the stuff. But better still, okay, maybe it's a proposal, but it's a preamble of a proposal, a summary of the preamble, right? And then you now do the system analysis itself, and then the SWOT analysis itself, right?
Right, clear, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, feedback, question before we end the class? Okay. We assume that we are good to go, and the session has been put out there. I'll post the slide before the end of business today, as well as the recording. I'll post it before the end of business. You can access it, and please do the discussion on Moodle. Okay, so that will be it. Thank you very much for coming. We see you when I see you.
Okay, no problem. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. No assignment is incorrect. Everything is correct in this class.
Bye.